Oi, oi, it's your boy, the Carlston Harris of having boxing that embarrass. Jack Slack, it's the Jack Slack podcast, and we're coming at you following UFC Macau, Song Yadong versus Davison Figueiredo. And honestly, I quite enjoyed this one. It was very under the radar for me. It was one of those ones where I was like, well, I'll watch it because there's nothing else on. And I had a pretty good time, I would say. It was very funny that every Chinese fighter on this card except Song Yadong lost. Or actually, to be fair, in Sumaderji's case, he didn't lose, but his fight didn't go his way by his own doing. Everyone else on the card who was from China got battered. Which is very funny because the UFC, once every 2 years, goes to China and says, we're going to break through in China. And they even built a performance institute out there, and then everyone gets bodied. Because the only great Chinese fighter at the moment is Zhang Weili, and they're not going to put her on a Chinese card because they save her for numbered events. It was crazy that they had Yan Xiaonan as the number one contender in that division, and they were going to China like 2 weeks before the pay-per-view, which was in Vegas. And you were going, why? What's the point of that? If you actually want to break through in China, take your Chinese champion and Chinese challenger to China. But alas, they did not. So main event was Song Yadong versus Davison Figueiredo. This was like a continuation of Davison Figueiredo's last fight, where all the bad Davison Figueiredo habits that he can outweigh, he can sort of counter them by being massively powerful and a really surprisingly good scrambler and grappler. That sort of often makes up for his horribly low pace and lack of urgency. It's almost like the opponent putting some grappling on him, putting some stuff on him, makes him work at a higher pace, and then he lands good counters, he threatens his awesome guillotine, he uses his own wrestling to get on top. He's kind of like Chito Vera if Chito Vera actually had something that could convince him that he needs to work now. But this fight and his last one against Umar Nurmagomedov, he just circled the cage and did not quite sod all, but very close to sod all. The early going was Yadong scoring with his step-up outside low kick because Figgy was standing southpaw. A couple of fighters on this card, but I'm going to start with Figgy because we're in the main event, but a couple of fighters on this card were trying to do that stupid switch step run-through flurry, which works once. It doesn't work if you try it multiple times after it's already failed. And Figgy kept trying it. And then by the second round, he was so slow that he'd shift through, fall short on the punch, and then get hit with the straight right by Yadong before he could get back on position. In the first round, though, Figgy looked okay. He didn't look as fast as he always has. I mean, he had his moments in this fight where you were going, oh yeah, that's who he was back in the day. Like in the first round, he created a nice exchange, shot head outside single, didn't finish it, but the entry was really good. And then even the finishing sequence, Song Yadong hit him with a low kick, and Figgy did the pull and then come back in for the double leg. And he actually got the takedown, but he fell right into the guillotine. But that's been a Figgy staple forever. This thing where he pulls by leaning straight back like he's doing limbo, not turning his body like you would to do a drop away. He leans straight back at the waist, and then he turns his body to his right side and weaves himself back in at waist level and takes you down. The number of people he's done it to, he did it to fucking Piotr Jan. And it's such a long movement. It's such a roundabout way of doing the level change in answer to someone striking. And he still gets it on everyone. It's crazy. That's the sort of stuff that makes Davison Figueiredo special. The stuff that he was doing for most of this fight, which is what he was doing against Umar, which is backing off the whole time. Switching stances, backing off, switching stances, backing off, and then trying to land one good counter. And getting either pulled into the clinch or hit with two things in the aftermath. That doesn't work. It's crazy how long it did work for him. This really low output game in flyweight, which is a crazy high-paced division, but bantamweight is almost as high-paced, and bantamweight has a lot more bangers in it than flyweight. So the fact that he's been able to get by on just one punch at a time at bantamweight is crazy. And he was making some strange choices in this one. His first good strike was a left body kick, which Yadong almost grabbed and threw him down off. But my theme this episode is going to be the theme that I've had my entire fucking career, is ringcraft, but the entirety of this fight took place with Figueiredo's back foot brushing the fence. I talked in the preview about how Song Yadong, he can apply pressure and he can cut the cage decently. But when he was doing it against Sean O'Malley, who can actually use some defensive ringcraft, ring generalship, and like change direction, and will religiously circle out instead of getting cornered, what would happen was that Yadong would get him to the fence and then not take advantage, and Sean would be gone before he could do anything. Or he'd throw one thing and then let Sean circle off. And to effectively apply pressure, you want to do one thing, stay, do the next thing. It's a riskier way to fight because you have to hang around in exchanging range, but that would be much more effective for Song Yadong. I don't know why he doesn't try. I don't know why he wants to land one combination and then let the guy circle off and reset in the center. But we'll get into like stuff that could improve Song Yadong in a minute. Figgy lost this fight and the Umar fight largely because he just floated around on the back foot the entire time. And his only option for getting on the front foot was to like attack off the fence, which is kind of bad because you're a caged animal. People know that because you can't go backwards anymore, you're going to come forwards. So timing counters on people like that is very easy, whether that's a counter punch or a level change onto their legs and hips or just into the clinch. But also because the other guy has the option to drop back through the center of the cage. He can just go back forever. We're going to talk about this with Angela Hill versus Jingnan. If one guy has his back to the cage and the other guy has his back to the center of the ring, backing straight up is not ideal. It's not particularly good practice. But if you've got acres of space behind you, it'll work a lot better for you than the guy who's almost on the fence already. So you're starting every exchange with this fundamental imbalance where you are at a disadvantage, whether you think you are or not. Having said that Song Yadong let Sean O'Malley get away every time that he cornered him, I did like that Yadong was pressuring Figgy towards the fence, and Figgy was obliging because Figgy was just meandering around near the fence. But then he'd get close enough that he could put his right hand on Figgy's chin almost without stepping, which is brilliant because it meant he could just reach out and smack his head back. Those are really hard to deal with. Everyone in MMA is working on I'll start reacting when they step towards me. If you start pressuring someone to the fence and you get close enough where you can just reach out and hit them, you're putting them under a lot of pressure and you're able to hit them off the bat a lot easier without them having time to react. It does involve getting into punching range with them, and it takes some guts to do, but it was nice to see Song Yadong doing that. There were several points in this fight where he just reached out and popped him on the nose with this right hand because Figgy was standing southpaw. He'd just shoot the right straight down the center, almost without stepping, maybe a small step, but he definitely wasn't moving to Figgy. He was already there to reach out and like he was snatching something off Figgy's face. There was a cool moment, actually. Figgy got taken down off a body kick, as I said earlier. He started with body kicks, and I went, are you sure? And then later he got taken down off a body kick. But he did use a nice leg entanglement to kick away and stand up. He started working on the leg, reaped it across his body. Yadong sat back, and then he freed his other leg to kick Yadong in the chest and get away and get back up to his feet. Yadong kept the leg in the style that you would off a caught kick and chased him up to the feet. And Figgy landed a nice elbow while on one leg, which is really underutilized in MMA. If you watch someone like Nongo, or watch Nongo before he was completely washed, but if you watch a really good Nakmue, a good Thai boxer, they throw their kicks, and when their kicks get caught, they throw elbows, or they put their hands on the guy's face and then they slice them with elbows. And in MMA, there's this epidemic of like, I throw kicks until my kick is caught, and then I go, oh my God, what am I doing? And I cover up on one leg, or I hop backwards and get punched in the face a bunch. In Muay Thai, people expect the kick to be caught, and they use that because when you wrap your arm over a leg, your arm is now no longer defending your head. And if you're holding the leg, you are close enough to hit because you're not going to leave range while holding the guy's leg. So finish came quite early. I thought this fight was going to go a bit longer than it did. I felt like a lot happened in that space of time. Even though I just criticised Figgy's low pace. But Figgy does the pull, comes in on the legs, takes Song Yadong down. Yadong wraps the neck, gets the guillotine. The standard Team Alpha Male guillotine. It's very funny. This week I said Song Yadong is good and he's not getting any better because that's been the story with him. He's 28 years old. Everyone's expecting him to go into his prime soon, but he hasn't really changed at all in years. Conditioning still very much a problem for him later in fights. And the thing that I'm going to talk about not pushing his advantages and one exchange not leading to the next is another huge one. And so people blame Team Alpha Male because they have historically produced little guys who are very explosive and run forward swinging overhands and then hit a double leg and don't have much more than that. And Yadong might be the best rounded fighter they've produced, except TJ Dillashaw, who went off and did his own thing with Dwayne Ludwig. Team Alpha Male, very physically talented team, very confident with what they do, but it is all basically just running punches and guillotines and double legs. But let's approach this a little bit differently. How could Figgy have improved his performance in this fight, even just circling off the fence? If you watch, say, Deiveson Figueiredo and you watch Sean O'Malley and ignore all the strikes, when they fought Song Yadong, this is, ignore all the strikes, Sean O'Malley is constantly moving and adjusting so that he isn't in that disadvantageous position of having his back towards the fence. And if he is, he's working to get out there. He's faking one way, going the other. He could attack off the fence. That is a viable way to get off. I wouldn't do it all the time because you'll get countered. But most of the time, it's this constant movement and adjustment. And that is a lot of high-level striking. If you watch someone like Valentina Shevchenko, I know, right? But it's constantly adjusting the distance so that it's always perfect for you. And that takes a lot of mental energy to keep track of. Your eyes are always working. And it takes a ton of little adjustments of your feet. Figgy was much more like, I'm going to stand here. Oh, he's getting a bit close. I don't like that. I'm going to go stand there. Oh, he's getting close again. And it was like they used to say endurance hunting worked. You chase an animal at a jog. The animal gets up and sprints off and then goes and sits down and you jog up to it and it has to do it again. And that's how Figgy was reacting to Song Yadong pressuring him in this one. He was just like, oh, please leave me alone. I'm going to go over there. Leave me alone, please. So just turning himself off the fence would have been a great thing to do, just to give himself more space to work in. If you watch someone like Sean O'Malley, they will step around the guy so that they're standing on the monster can or whatever. And then, I hate that that's official terminology in MMA coverage, standing on the monster can. And then they've got all that room to move in every direction to set up something further on down the line. It's very hard to set up a big counter while you're exactly where the opponent wants to put you. I'd have been maybe more careful with the body kicks, just stick to high kicks if you can get them off. Might have been better off going orthodox for longer periods in this fight. I'd have thrown the fucking shifting techniques in the slot bucket, because a lot of the time when you shift at someone, especially if your back is to the fence, you're expecting them to run back towards the middle of the cage, and the one time they don't, you just run over the top of them and they get an easy double leg or they chin you. But it was interesting because I watched this fight the next day and I knew the result was guillotine. And the very first takedown that Figgy attempts is a head outside single, which he's done quite a lot. He did it against Corey Sandhagen. He did it against Rob Font. It's one of his go-tos. And I was watching that going, oh, if you know the guy you're fighting loves a good guillotine, why do you go straight to that takedown? Maybe just a little consideration. And then there are things you can do to make your head outside single less susceptible to guillotines. Daniel Cormier's thing was to pick up the leg and immediately start throwing the guy onto his other leg, onto his standing leg, and looking across his back, putting your ear on his back and looking across him. That's like a postural defense to the guillotine threat. He also did a thing where he switched his arms, so his outside arm went deep between their legs, like elbow under taint, and that worked really well for him in lifting the guy up and throwing him across. The alternative is the other way, where you see people like Rani Yahya and Jake Shields, very unexplosive, not throwing the guy around type guys, and they would shoot their head outside single with their ear on the thigh. Because if you've got your head hanging around their hips, they can wrap your head, and it's basically whether you've shrugged your shoulders right, whether they're able to get their hand through. That's all going to play out as it does in the middle of a scramble. If you shoot with your ear on their thigh, it's very hard for them to reach down and wrap your head in the same way. People's arms just aren't that long typically. Maybe Torres Finney, but generally people's arms aren't that long. So Rani Yahya and Jake Shields used to shoot that and then hit the crackdown, which is again a very low explosivity, old boy, lunch pail wrestler type move. But there's stuff you can stop them hitting the guillotine with, because if you see, this is the thing, Guillotines sometimes work, and we always go on about how, like, it's not a reliable way to defend yourself. But if the barriers to the guillotine working, like head position, posture, throwing them onto the other leg, keeping them off balance, if those don't happen, if you just shoot a bad takedown, guillotine is still super viable. Actually, Jake Shields also used to keep his ear to his outside shoulder when he shot his head outside single, which means that there isn't room for the arm to come through between the neck and the shoulder, between your chin and your shoulder. Feels very unnatural to do. So if you shoot a head outside single to your right on their lead leg, but you keep your right ear to your right shoulder, it feels like there's loads of space on the left side of your head. So you have to bring your right shoulder forward, basically. Anyway, really in the weed stuff there. Let's talk about what's next for Song Yadong, because like I said, he's in this weird spot where he is a perennial top 10 sort of guy. Tapology has him at 6 at the moment. But you look above him and you think, you're going to have trouble with all of those. And you look below him and you're like, oh, I think he's got a good chance against any of them. So we've seen Yadong versus Yan. It was a good competitive fight, but Yan took over. And Yadong has had some issues in later rounds. Like against O'Malley, a lot of people felt he should have won that one. But in the third round, he basically stopped doing anything. Merab, again, pace machine. Umar, another pace machine. Sean O'Malley's at number 3. The first fight was close enough that I could see Yadong winning it. I've been talking about like his ringcraft issues there, but it's stuff that he could fix for one night even. Song's at 5. Underneath him, Ayman Zahabi. Yeah, that's a very winnable fight for him, actually. But then we keep saying that with Ayman Zahabi. We keep saying, yeah, he's really outperforming what he should be doing, but maybe he would come in and have a perfect game plan for Song Yadong. And his boxing's very good. Deiveson Figueiredo was 7, who he's just beaten. Mario Batista, that's a fun fight. I would really love to see that one. But how do you improve Song Yadong at this point? I think he seems to have picked up like pressure, as in walking the guy towards the fence and realizing that's a good idea. He uses that to land like a step up outside low kick and then swing an overhand, or a right low kick and then jump in with a left hook, which almost always misses. Master of that technique was Cub Swanson. I just wrote an article about that when Cub Swanson retired. There was a section called short low kick, long left hook, because Cub would stand almost on top of the guy, throw the right low kick, and then leap in with the longest, widest left hook possible, and just about catch them on the end. Whereas Song Yadong throws like a calf kick and then tries to jump in with a left hook, and it's just not getting there in time most of the time. Can, but it doesn't mostly. But that's like little mechanical nitty-gritty stuff. The bigger issue is that to use that pressure effectively, you cannot let it go after each exchange, because then all you're doing is like lining up one good swing at the guy, letting him walk off, and then going, right, let's try and do that again, and trying to corner him again, all to set up one more swing. I would love to see him throw some strikes, move his head, stay in range, and throw some more strikes. It's the stuff he's probably training every day with his boxing coach on the mitts. It's the stuff he's probably training on the double end bag. Punch, punch, move head, punch, punch. But doing it in a fight, very different. But that's what I want to see. I want to see throw some punches, move your head. There's like 7 different directions you can move your head. Even just fake a shot or duck in for a real shot and then try and hit them on the way out. But then come up with some more punches. He never works beyond 2 or 3 strikes, and there's never any follow-up. Whenever you see him land well, sometimes it's because he's got good ring position, but it's mainly because he's super explosive and he can cover a lot of distance. He has the footwork that he could manufacture these exchanges and then push the advantage of them. But he just, it's this, like, I've scored, now I let you circle round, and then I try and do it again. For a guy who's really explosive and knocks people out and can pick up a submission really quickly too, it's done in these spurts rather than in a constant build towards something better. But anyway, what else was good on this card? I'll tell you what wasn't. Alonzo Menifield versus Mingyang Zhang, or Zhang Mingyang. Can't believe they tricked us into thinking this guy was an exciting prospect. My notes say just a fucking mess, but the main thing that I took away from this was that Zhang Mingyang would throw a kick and then get hit back immediately. So he's throwing the longest weapon he has, like a body kick or a head kick, and then he's standing there with his arms down as Alonzo Menifield, who's half a foot shorter than him and has tiny limbs, jumped at him and hit him with a counter left hook, which wasn't even a counter because it arrived like a day after the kick did. It was a well-considered, handwritten rebuttal. And then whenever he was in the clinch, Mingyang Zhang would pull back, throw a big elbow, which was good. He's hurt people with that in the UFC in the past. Pull back, throw a big elbow, and then he'd stand there. And Menifield, it would either miss, which a lot of elbows coming out of the clinch do, or hit Menifield, and Menifield would swing back with 3 punches and hurt Zhang because he was just standing there gormlessly looking at him. I don't think we need to do who's next for either of these guys, or like how could Zhang have won this fight. It's a mess. Alex Perez versus Sumaderji was a fight that got off to an interesting start, and it was turning into a good fight, but ended prematurely due to kick to the dick. But people were a little bit surprised that Alex Perez, he came out looking like a killer against Charles Johnson. And he'd looked pretty good against Almabayev before he got caught, looked good against Matthias Nicolau, looked good against Muhammad Makayev. Honestly, he's had like 4 good performances recently. He got a title shot when he wasn't looking very good, just because they didn't have anything else going on. He had like 9 cancelled fights between then, got stopped in the first round by Pantoja. So he's sort of come back, but against Charles Johnson, he looked really good, and here he looked really messy. This was, I mean, I'm going to keep hitting on the Ringcraft theme. I did warn you that it comes up a lot today because of these fights. But he was backing Sumaderji up to the fence, which is a great move because Sumaderji is very long and he's going to hit you from, a step further than you can hit him. As demonstrated when they were out in the open for like any period of time. But Perez would move in towards the fence and Sumaderji southpaw, he would step outside Sumaderji's lead leg, throw the right straight or the right overhand, and then he would fall forwards into southpaw stance and throw a right hook from there. Now, the way that worked was that he did it like a drive-by. So when they got towards the fence, Sumaderji's back foot is on the fence, Alex Perez is coming in. Alex Perez comes down the outside of the lead leg, throws the right hand. Sumaderji starts circling off to his left, away from where Perez is stepping to. And Perez falls forward and throws another swing, which arrives like a snappy line thought up too late as the door closes behind Sumaderji on his way out. You can use a shifting right hook to cut off the ring. You would step forward, not straight down the side of him. You would step forward, throw the right hand, and then step to 45 forwards to your right, say 2 o'clock, and throw the right hook again to stop the guy as he's circling around. If you step down the left side of him with your first punch, you're really just like desperately chasing him because he's already on the way out the other direction. And it happened every single time. Go watch this fight again. Perez is just throwing the right hand, falling forwards into a shift and throwing another right hand, which never comes close because Sumaderji's circling out. And he never had like a right kick. He never had anything else to stop Sumaderji circling in that direction. So he basically chased him for the first round. I did like that when Sumaderji threw the front kick, Perez did what I call climbing the rigging, but he caught the kick and he threw it across and came in with a left hook. I think it was a left hook to the body or a left hook to the head. I was talking about this on the Boycast. There's a guy, a minimum weight Muay Thai fighter called Duan Gao Gao, Duan 99. Gao Gao is 99 in Thai. He's exceptional at this. He waits for the kick, catches it, and he either throws it to his left and jumps in with a left hook to the body, or he throws it back to his right the way it came. So if it's a left kick, he throws it back to his right and then comes in with the right straight to the body. And he always enters off the body shot, but it works really well when the guy's on one leg. And it's a fantastic way for closing distance for a very short fighter. Because he's minimum weight and he looks too small for that weight class too. Like everyone is taller than him there. Rod Tang also does this. But that was good to see Perez do that. I got in my notes, worst shot in the world from Perez. There were some bad shots on this card, but he attempted one. And when he attempted that shot, Sumaderji ran around the side and locked his hands in a vice grip to start attacking the Darce. Loved that. For a guy that long, the Darce is a no-brainer. Because for normal length guys, I'd advise learning the Islam Makhachev short Darce. It's just really, really powerful. But for a long guy like that, you can lock a long Darce, like a full Darce. Very little effort. You're not going to be struggling to get your hand all the way through. But Perez had popped up to like quad pod and out to his feet before Sumaderji could get him down on his side. When you're attacking a Darce from a front headlock, you've got to get the guy down on his side. You've got to break him down. You can't do it from him on all fours. And then Sumaderji ended the first round with a nice takedown. And Perez threatened him with a guillotine. But basically, all Perez was known for, up until his title shot against Deiveson Figueiredo, was that he had a pretty good guillotine. But round 2, like, they come out and Sumaderji immediately drops him with a 3-2. I did like Perez's work on the bottom, surviving. He was using overhooks, which are always a good choice. So if you watch Charles Oliveira against Arman Tsarukyan, one of the few great ground and pounders left in the sport, and by wrapping over the arm with the overhook, Charles Oliveira is able to keep him from attacking for the most part. And then the other one that Oliveira also uses, Fedor used to use it a lot, when the guy's forearm is on your chest, like he's reaching up towards a can opener sort of grip, you put the crook of your elbow over his forearm and you pull it into your chest so that his wrist turns upwards. So that he's looking at the palm of his hand, basically. But you put your forearm and crook of the elbow over that and you pull it into your chest like that by turning their forearm. And that keeps them quite tight as well, stops them from landing strikes. So he was able to survive really well there. There was also a nice sequence in that second round after he got up from surviving where he landed a really nice inside slip to right hand to the body. Now that is how you enter on a big long guy. Beautiful stuff. Slip the jab, throw the right hand to the body at the same time, and got straight into the clinch off that and started trying to hit a power twist. Sumaderji's hands went to the floor and he immediately started jumping for a seated katakatami, that modified guillotine with the arm in across your body. But Sumaderji worked his way out, and then Sumaderji kicked him in the dick, and that was the end of the fight. So it was actually shaping up really interestingly. But I really was over. I think Perez probably had most of the good offense except for getting dropped in round 2. It did look like it was sort of swinging Sumaderji's way, but I just couldn't get over that. Even when Perez was attacking and looked to be in control, he was so limited by his ability to step right. He just couldn't generate pressure from his right side, even though he's entirely right-handed as a puncher. Even though he excels with the right hook and the right overhand and the right straight, he's constantly stepping outside the lead leg of the southpaw, and he's got no pressure coming from the right side of his body to stop Sumaderji circling that way. Which is one of the dangers of like just talking about southpaws and saying, well, you step down the outside of the lead leg, because that's not always the answer. That's one thing to set up a right straight out in the open. If you actually want to swarm in on a guy and like throw multiple punches and work him up and down, not always the best option. Jake Matthews versus Carlston Harris. Jake Matthews is kind of like, is it Mike Davies? One of those guys who looks like an absolute killer until he fights the best guys in the world and then doesn't. And then he goes back to like a level lower in competition. You go, oh, he's just murdering people now. But Carlston Harris, mostly known for losing badly to Shavkat. Supposedly mainly a boxer. But Jake Matthews lumped him up in this one. One of the things that really bamboozled me was that Jake Matthews was coming out and throwing right-hand leads. And there are ways you can throw right-hand. So right-hand lead is throwing your right straight first without a jab. But there's ways you can throw it that sort of hide that. So Roy Jones Jr. would stand very square with his right hand in the middle of his chest so that he could shoot it without turning his shoulders. Which meant that it was a less powerful punch, but it did go quicker, so he could use it as a jab, which is very unorthodox, and people were very confused by that. And it set up a big left hook. So he'd poke them with the right jab and immediately hit them with the left hook. But when you stand in a normal stance, and then you lunge forward and you take a big step and you throw your right straight from there, that is slow as shit. So to get hit by it constantly is not a good sign. It's possible. There are people who are much faster than you, or your reactions could just take a while to get going. Typically, that's why like good fighters will fight quite conservative for the first bit of a fight, so that the opponent's nervous energy calms down. They slow down a little bit, and then you're working with your technique versus their technique. But Carlston Harris just kept taking this right straight on the chin, and his corner didn't offer much advice either. But we'll get into fixing that in a minute. I liked Jake Matthews' use of the teep occasionally in this fight. He would throw a few punches, land them, and then he'd give Carlston Harris a turn. And again, Carlston Harris' back foot always on the fence. So he's throwing at Jake Matthews, who's in the center of the cage and can move backwards. So Jake Matthews would take a step back, let him fall short, come back in. But sometimes Jake Matthews would throw his combination, and then just as Carlston Harris wants to come back off the cage, he'd hit him with the teep in the gut. That really takes energy out of people. It's very mentally tiring, even if you've got great body conditioning, even if you've got rock hard abs, it's very tiring to start to get going and the guy just poke you and go, no. Jake Matthews' left hook was landing constantly on the counter because Carlston Harris throws his punches by lunging forward behind his face. Just about everything Carlston Harris does, there are massive mechanical holes with. And I know I'm always on this podcast saying, like, bad mechanics don't necessarily mean bad fighter, but I don't know what the fuck Carlton Harris, I don't know how he got this far fighting like this. When they hit the ground, Carlton Harris was trying some cool octopus guard stuff from half. So that's when you swim the reverse underhook through. Look up octopus guard, because I can't describe it here at full length. But the way to beat the octopus guard, there's a few. One of them is to get your arm back in front of their face, which Matthews tried like 4 or 5 times. And then he did something cool that you don't see a lot. To do the octopus guard, you have to come up on your elbow, on your bottom elbow. And in most half guard stuff, when you want to wrestle up, if you can fold the guy down on his bottom elbow, he's in a lot of trouble. So Matthews reached the arm that he kept trying to reach back with, he couldn't do anything. So he just reached over Carlton Harris's back, down to the arm he was getting up on, and pulled it out behind him. And he started to like hammerlock him up his own back. If you want to see someone do that and win, Shinya Aoki versus Mizuto Hirota in, was that Dream maybe? But Aoki was a wizard on the ground. He took this guy down, passed his arm behind his back while he was passing guard. And then he pulled it up the guy's back, police armlock style, until it snapped. Another one is Phil Davis in the UFC, did a Kimura and passed it underneath the guy's back to his other hand, went to north-south and just yanked it like he was starting a lawnmower. Old school hammerlocks, they're very cool. So from the top in this fight, Jake Matthews was basically just offering some of the Sean Brady offense. Go to half guard because you know that they can't get up from half guard. If you sit on their bottom leg, you keep chopping out their bottom arm. You can threaten the Kimura. He didn't ever threaten the one-hand guillotine that Sean Brady loves, but he was threatening that Kimura that Sean Brady uses all the time. He actually stepped over to mount from it and got rolled over at the end of the second round. Third round, he came out and dropped Harris immediately. He clapped him with 2 counter left hooks, which Harris ate the first one and was like, I'll try again. It's like, take a break, mate. Just take a breather and reassess. And then he dinged him with the right hand, and Carlton Harris went face down, arse up on this fall. It was a pretty bad one. He did recover, but Jake Matthews jumped on him and then held top half guard for the rest of the fight, not really doing much. And people were like, whoa, if you just stood up, you could have finished him. I think he gassed out. I think he was, the way that he fought the rest of that round leads me to believe that he was very tired. Maybe he had a little adrenaline dump off the punch or something. Maybe he came out for the third round and was already very tired and just happened to hit him really hard. But people don't give up. What is it now? Is it $25,000 flat bonus for a finish? I suspect he was feeling rough. So how do we, let's have a look at this from a more analytical sort of sense. How would Carlton Harris do better in this fight? The right hand lead is the one that it bugs me that he did not deal with that, because when you say like don't throw a right hand lead, it's very easy for the guy to slip and come back with the left hook. It's very easy for the guy to catch and throw back the right hand. It's very easy for the guy to slip and throw thread the right hand through at the same time, or overhand. There's a lot of good counters for the right hand lead, and the thing about it is that it's slower than the jab, so you'll see it. It's not magic that you'll just get murdered if you throw right hand leads, but it is slower and you're giving the guy more of a chance. So the times it works really well is as a surprise. The times it doesn't work well is when you do it constantly. That's when giving that guy the extra milliseconds to see it every time starts to become a liability. But if you're getting tagged by something with that early, get your fucking hands up. It's not like Carlton Harris is out there with his hands down by his chest. It's like there are so many ways you could make this more complicated for Jake Matthews. All you need to do is like the classic Russian boxing stance, which is right hand by your jaw, left hand fist up between your eyes and theirs. Because then he has to thread that right hand around. You are occupying that line that he wants to throw it down. He has to throw it a bit more goofily. You get a bit more chance to see it, and there's a good chance that your arm gets in the way and takes some stank off the punch, or it doesn't land. Just have your hand a bit higher. That's literally all it takes. It's annoying when people go, why didn't he have his hands up whenever someone's knocked out? Because that just isn't how fighting works. But by raising your hands a bit higher early in the fight when you're getting caught with something you can't see yet, that will buy you time and that will make things easier. Never trying it is frustrating. And even if you didn't want to have the hand up like the classical Russian boxing stance, put your left hand on top of your head. Point your elbow at him. It's a really defensive stance. It's giving up your lead hand. But even guys like Jose Aldo will do that in the early going of a fight, just to say, a little bit worried about Chad Mendes' sprinting overhand. I'll just keep this up here while I get my looks in, while I get a look at him and see if I feel confident bringing it down. Left elbow out, right hand high to palm jabs, and you're pretty much set. Because if the guy wants to punch you in the body, it's there, but he has to step in and level change and drop his hands to do that. So he becomes a lot more hittable. You're not going to get domed standing in that sort of posture. And the whole purpose of doing that is so that you can start to read the guy, react to him, and not just stand there going, ow, what was that? Ow, what was that? And never seeing it. You get the chance to see the punch because it's going to land on your guard and get used to it. The other thing that really annoyed me about Carlston Harris was that he kept lunging forward with his head and throwing, like he's throwing the right hand to the body, which I love to see. I love to see fighters using the right hand to body. He's throwing overhands and stuff. But if you're getting cracked with the counter left hook every time, because he's leaning back onto his rear foot and slapping with the counter left hook, you've got to do something about it. That's when you start using your jab, which Carlston Harris barely used in this fight. You start faking and threatening things, but not actually throwing them, or pump a double jab. Like the double jab, I'm always saying it's great for covering distance, but it's great for putting a jab out and then jabbing the guy again when he thinks something different's going to happen. If you throw 2 or 3 jabs in rapid succession, you can say, no, you have to respect the jab, and then that starts setting up other things. Or throw some kicks, but he had his back foot on the fence, so it's bad time to sort of throw kicks off there. If you see, we're going to talk about this with Angie Hill and Xiong Jingnan, but if you see the guys just backing through the center of the cage constantly when you come off the cage, stop trying to fucking punch him. Throw like 1-2-1 and run into a low kick. That's when you do those things, like the classic Shogun Hua versus Machida. Catch the trailing leg as he's trying to run away. And then there's always the option of, if the guy's clapping you with the left hook constantly, instead of lunging your face towards his belly or his solar plexus, his center line, lunge your face towards his right shoulder and throw the overhand. If you watch Junior Dos Santos versus Mark Hunt, he gets clapped with a few counter left hooks like this because that was what Mark Hunt was looking for all the time in those days. He'd palm whatever you did with your left hand and he'd throw the counter left hook. So Junior Dos Santos leans deep to his left and throws the overhand. The left hook grazes him because his head's so far over that he's not in like the power zone of it. And his overhand cracks Hunt over the top of his left hook. That puts Jake Matthews at 37 in the UFC rankings, according to Tapology. Who's around him? There's loads of guys there he can fight. Let's have a look at like the top end, the official UFC rankings. I mean, D-Rod is ranked at number 15, and he's not good. So that would be a good fight to jump in with. But who else we got? Uros Medic, Michael Venom Page. Hard fights for him. Mike Malott, possible. And then we're getting into sort of stuff that I don't think Jake Matthews is going to be within grasp of. It is always a fun exercise, though. I used to do this back in the day in my articles. Like, when we talk about who someone should fight next, I used to talk about good stylistic matchups, more troubling stylistic matchups, and then sort of like the best ranked guy to make you look good. Because that's what a manager should be after. Like you should be trying to find a guy who is very confident, so he thinks he'll take the fight with you and beat you, but is specifically like the highest ranked best matchup you can get. Someone to make you look $1 million and also have a good name. What else we got? Ray Tsuruya versus Luis Gurule. I wasn't super familiar with Gurule, but I do like saying his name. Ray Tsuruya I'd seen before. He looked a bit helpless against Joshua Van, but I'd seen him in his previous UFC fight and his road to UFC fights. And I'd watched him on the road to UFC because I saw one of his fights and I thought, damn, he's got a really interesting style. He's got like 1 million techniques as a grappler. His striking sort of let him down when he hit a wall against Joshua Van, and he was trying like more and more flashy bullshit takedowns. And you're going, no, man, you just need to be able to get to the head outside single, head inside single, whatever your shot is. You need to be able to do that concussed and tired. Like that's the secret to being a good grappler in MMA, not having 1 million techniques. But honestly, I thought his striking looked good here. There seemed to be a matchups to sort of like, get his confidence back. But he came out, he's southpaw, hand fight in the lead hand, threw a lovely left straight, threw a lovely left high kick. He was looking for the southpaw up jab to left straight, threw it once, landed, threw it later, dropped him. What I loved about Tsuruya is like you were watching a real technician on the ground, because the moment he dropped him, that's when a lot of guys get excited and go Donkey Kong and tire themselves out trying to get a finish. He immediately gets the front headlock and has his knee behind Gurule's elbow so that he can run to the back without resistance. And having the knee behind the elbow also means you can go to the back, but you can also swing back to facing him head on and sit down on the seated katagatame, which is that modified guillotine with the arm across the body. He ended up in like a single hook back mount, but on top of him, and he was just battering him. I did like when they stood up, he had one hook in, and Gurule stood on one leg and pummeled the leg that was hooked out. Leg pummeling at high level, love to see that. The way he got caught at the end, Gurule, was the situation we always talk about. He was holding his weight. This is where guys get rear naked choked now. It's not when they're on their back fighting the hands. It's when you're halfway up to your feet and you put your hand down to keep on balance. And then you have nothing to stop the hands coming through choking you. And that's how he got caught. Crazy thing is, I'm looking at Rei Tsuruya's ranking. Tapology have him at number 43 of 48 in the UFC, which is harsh because he's really good. And his only loss is to Joshua Van. But then how old is he? He's 23. Fucking hell. So this is like a legit, quite exciting prospect. Because I thought his striking looked mint. He wasn't fighting Joshua Van, which will do horrible things to how your striking looks. But he looked very confident and snappy, which, to be honest, on the road to UFC, I didn't think he had a lot of snap to his punches. He looked good here. One thing that I did worry me quite a lot, there's not a point going like, what can Luis Gurule do to win? Because I don't know a lot about Gurule's style. And he got like two things off before he got dropped and then was stuck in a cycle where he got finished. But one thing I did see in this fight was he threw a right straight to Tsuruya's body, which is going to be very common as Tsuruya's a southpaw, people stepping in with the right straight to the body. And Tsuruya dropped everything and had his chin high up in the air. Like he dropped his hands to touch the punch that was touching his body, which is like, it doesn't do anything for you. At that point, just take the punch. And a lot of people early in the fight will just take body punches like that and not reach down for them. If you're reaching down for them that early, that makes me worry. Normally, it takes a lot of body punches to get a guy reaching, and then that's an error on his part, and he'll get chinned for it if the other guy's sharp. But if you see someone drop their hands like that on the first exchange, that's not great. Because the other guy can go level change, overhand, level change, high kick, level change uppercut, level change overhand, level change takedown. You can build off that because when you react like that by dropping your hands completely, if the guy level changes, you're giving up all your defense except 2 takedowns. You're not even really defending the right straight to the body. Aoriquileng versus Cody Haddon. Where did this lad come from? He was pretty good, this Cody Haddon. This was a sort of MMA 101 in the modern era, sort of fence wrestling fight. Haddon came out, faked his level change, slapped the leg, back to Aoriquileng to the fence, shot an easy takedown straight into the clinch. And I thought it was really interesting because these takedowns at the start looked or this takedown attempt at the start looked so effective because he ran him into the fence. And that's footwork, that's ring position. When he shot out in the open shortly afterwards, and he fell like on his face, he did it twice, just dive bombed into the floor underneath Aoriquileng's sprawl. By having him by the fence, he just level changed and pushed him into the fence and then had his takedown. He kept using that single... Well, what I loved was he got the back body lock and he grabbed the hand and pulled it in like a Dagestani handcuff on the mat, but on the feet. And then he tripped him down so that Aoriquileng fell on his arm and was in that Dagestani handcuff position, folded down. And then Haddon got to work beating him up. And then you just put him in that cycle of, am I mounting you and hitting you while you've got one hand trapped behind your back? Or are you turning your back and giving me the single hook? And that played out over and over again. And this fight I was watching and I was just thinking, Sean Strickland versus Khamzat Chimaev. What he was so good at was he gets in this position where Khamzat's riding one of his legs. He's got to put his hand down on the mat. He does it a mile away from him while he's sitting against the cage so that Khamzat can't reach through and fold him down on it. And then he keeps taking it off the floor and sitting up with just like the strength of his back and his position. So there's clips. If you go watch that fight, there's these bits where Sean's like waving his hands to keep them away from Khamzat. And it looks really silly, but it's really good. Like if you watch Aoriquileng here, he just keeps trying to build up and the hand is always close enough that Cody Haddon can grab it and fold him down on it. That balance between being able to stand up on your hand or push yourself up with your hand or keep yourself up with your hand and then take it away so that it's not used against you, it's really hard to do. Also really liked that Haddon dominated all of round one on position, and then as the 10-second clock went, he stood up to do some fade-all punches, or Habib versus Michael Johnson punches, where you stand over the guy and you just throw as hard as you can, and you say, look, I'm trying to kill this guy. Now, Fedor did that all the time. He didn't really care about position, but it's lovely to see people do that. 2 horrible shots in round 2, but the second one, he gets sprawled on and he does the Hamzat bear crawl up towards the cage. Or actually, Khabib did that to Michael Johnson as well, but you get sprawled on and you just bear crawl towards the cage, and the cage makes the takedown so much more gettable. What I really liked was that the end of this fight played out because they were in the clinch. Haddon was pushing him to the fence and they were knee pummeling for position. I think knee jousting is what Danaher calls it, but you're trying to get your knee to the inside of the opponent's so that you can like bisect him with your knee. You put your knee into the fence and you turn him over it, the power twist. It's a very basic but very powerful takedown. And it starts horrible sequences for the guy on the fence. And so people use their knees to try and keep the opponent's knees out of the middle. And while they were knee pummeling, Haddon just went, oh, I'm going to knee you in the body instead, and smashed him. And Aoriquileng obviously caught Aoriquileng by surprise because Aoriquileng just, I got in my notes, Aoriquileng expired. So he just folded up in a ball and died. And that was the end of the fight. But this links with what I was saying about Francis Ngannou the other day, using that knee jostling to set up knee strikes. Love it. People were talking about Lee versus Diaz because I said on Twitter, I said, man, Taliesin Teixeira sucks. Also, Zhang Mingyang, Carlston Harris, Luis Felipe Diaz, and Yisak Lee. And people were like, why Diaz? Because he won by knockout quite impressively in the first round. Just if you look at this fight between the two of them, Lee and Diaz, both of them, neither can check a low kick. Both of them, when they throw low kicks, drop both hands and look straight down at the leg like a toddler trying to kick a football. And they got into this thing where Diaz was trying to check on one leg but getting kicked and then run in with punches afterwards. And Lee was so bad he was getting caught. Also, Diaz kept trying the Jorge Masvidal switch step flurry, but really, really slowly. It was just a really low quality fight, which we probably don't need to talk about. But if you like knockouts, more power to you. You can see them down the IHOP every night. Oh, Kai Asakura. Well, I mean, these 2 other ones on the main card, they were very quick and there isn't an awful lot to take away from them. Sergey Pav versus Taliesin Teixeira. Sergey Pav came out waving his lead hand between the two of them in a way that is very obvious. He's going to try and slap one of your hands out of the way and leap in punching. But Teixeira just stood there going like, oh, and then let him jump in. I think Sergey Pav caught his rear hand, so used his own left hand to slap Taliesin Teixeira's right hand down, which means you can throw your head aggressively towards that shoulder without worrying about getting chinned and throw your right hand for free. If you watch Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, he does that 5 or 6 times and really hurts Max. Because the standard is to use your lead hand as an inside hand trap against the opponent's lead hand, which takes away their jab, but mainly it removes the obstruction to your punch. It can, especially the guy's very tense, it pulls his shoulder away from his head and you can just chin him over the top of it. When you go for their rear hand, you have to step a bit deeper, but you're taking away one of their best counter weapons and you're slipping to the inside of their jab. So it's more committed because you have to step closer, but you are taking away more of their counter-offensive options, which means you can really go for it and swing the overhand, throw your head in and everything. Teixeira got knocked out very quickly. Not a very good fighter. Sergey Pav has been shown to, like, if you come out and circle, he doesn't have the ring craft, the smarts, anything. He doesn't have more than 2 techniques to close the distance. Now, Volkov is, I was going to say not everyone's as tall and long as Volkov, but Taliesin Teixeira literally is. But Volkov showed, like, he cannot close the distance on his own terms, and he looks terrible if you make him. So what's next for these guys? I mean, Sergey Pav gets another top heavyweight. Taliesin Teixeira, I do think he's kind of bad, but I also think they've kind of set him up to get this. Because as someone pointed out to me on Twitter, he fought Justin Taffer, worst heavyweight in the UFC, Derek Lewis, ranked heavyweight, Tai Tuivasa, worst heavyweight in the UFC, Sergey Pavlovich, number 3 ranked heavyweight. How do you go? What is that career path? And more importantly, why are you accepting those fights? Do you not have management who care about your future? There's no shame in turning down a fight if it makes no sense at this current moment. It doesn't matter if, like, the opponent says that you turned down that fight because no one gives a shit. No one believes anything anyone says about who turned down fights. How do you get out of a slobber knocker with the extremely washed and possibly alcoholic Tai Tuivasa and go, I'm ready for Sergey Pavlovich, where's the contract? So what's next for Taliesin Teixeira? Fight another Taffer brother, get on an Australia card, get booed in Australia for murdering a Taffa. No, there are only 30 heavyweights in the division, but Thaleson Teixeira is not the worst, and he shouldn't be fighting some of the best. Next for Sergey Pav, the top end of that division's a bit weird because obviously, we got what the fuck is even happening in that division? We got a champion who is out with injury, and Eddie Hearn is using him as like a publicity thing with Dana White for their spat. I don't think he really wants his release, but obviously he's been pretty badly treated by the UFC off that Cyril Gane thing. They're rewarding Cyril Gane with another title fight. They're giving that title fight to Alex Pereira, who's not a heavyweight, or, well, now he is, but he's done nothing at heavyweight. You got Josh Hockett at like number 5. You got Waldo Cortez Acosta at number 4, who, again, Sergey Pav beat, but looked bad against. Spivak down at number 6. I mean, Pavlovich probably beats him. So really for Sergey Pav, if you're number 3, sit and wait. Maybe you get that fight with Alex Pereira. Maybe he willingly trades with you, and then that's the absolute best shot you've ever got at winning a UFC heavyweight title. Or maybe you use that Greco that you allegedly have. Or maybe you can be the tune-up fight for Tom Aspinall when he comes back with an interim belt or whatever it is. Kai Asakura versus Cameron Smotherman. Not a lot happened. Kai threw a right uppercut from a mile away, weaved and shifted and threw a left and a right hook afterwards. Kai Asakura, most of his best work comes with his right hand, often right hooks. And he lands some really nice punches off weaves, so this wasn't too surprising. It was a running flurry against someone who wasn't going to level change and take him down. It was not a marked improvement on the stuff that he's been doing against very strong grapplers and losing, but it was nice to see him get back in the win column. There are plenty of fighters on the roster that he can beat. He is probably a victim of his own hype, because who else gets to come in and fight the reigning long-time champion in their first UFC fight? When most people who were familiar with him were like, he's good, but I don't think he's this level, and I think he could get to that level if he fought his way up like most people do. But, you get the Kai Asakura hype. He is extremely explosive and a fantastic finisher. What's the point of me saying what could Cameron Smotherman have done to not... I just don't get hit by that punch and continue the fight. But what's next for Kai Asakura? He's another one. Tapology's got a number 45 at flyweight, and you're like, he's better than that. Come on. Who could he take in the top 15? Let's have a look. Well, Brandon Moreno's washed, so there's a good chance there, though he is a decent grappler. Wouldn't like his chances against someone like Ulanbekov. Charles Johnson loses every third fight, so there's a great chance there. But no, Asim Amabayev probably takes him. Amir Albazi is still in the top 10. He's like a corpse. The man is so injured. I mean, I watched his fight with Brandon Moreno, and his spine is fused, and he's still in the top 10, like 2 fights later. Bruno Silva's number 15, and I could see Kai Asakura beating him quite handily, because Bruno Silva is just big swings, really, and he's not even that powerful, and he's tiny for that weight class as well. Maybe sort of like the best sort of guys you could put him against are maybe Brandon Royval and Loney Kavanagh for Striker's Delight. Worst guys you could put him in against... I mean, Tagira Ulanbekov is number 13 ranked, and he would probably be an awful opponent for Kai Asakura. Oh, Alex Perez is number 11, and I honestly, unless he really pushed his wrestling, that's probably like the best wrestler in those rankings that I would like Kai Asakura's chances against. And to be honest, actually, Asu Almabayev, there's always a good chance, because Kai Asakura is pretty big, because he was fighting at bantamweight for a long time. Asu Almabayev is tiny. He's like an atom weight. And if you watch his fights with like Alex Perez and stuff, he's really good technically, but it takes him a while to get going because everyone is stronger than him and everyone is longer than him. And he has to deal with these massive disadvantages right off the bat. So fight him and knee him to death. Probably not, though. Almabayev probably beats Asakura at this point. What else have we got? Oh, okay, let's talk about Angela Hill versus Zhang Jingnan. Someone retweeted a tweet I made in March, I think it was, when Zhang Jingnan was publicly unhappy with the One Championship treatment she was getting. If you didn't know, she had 7 title defenses of her MMA title, and then they just didn't give her an MMA fight for 4 years. They gave her a 4-ounce boxing match, a rule set they've never done before or since. She is the most obvious example that they had run out of ideas and fighters. But she was kind of like, she had good fights with Angela Lee, And people don't really know where to rate Angela Lee because she never got over to the UFC. We don't know like how she stands against other women in the world. Her other opponents, like a very old Michele Nicolini who gassed in the first round, a Tiffany Teo who's not particularly good, Miura who's like a one-trick pony. So someone was saying like, oh, her and Zhang could have a 3-fight trilogy and it could be amazing. And I said, I think she gets 30-27 by a returning Michelle Waterson. And now I think I might have been generous to her because she fought Angie Hill and Angie Hill looked like Samart. She just, Zhang Jingnan had nothing. Every attack, she just leans forward and swings. Angie Hill is piecing her up with knees and kicks. This whole fight was a lesson in don't stand with your back to the fence, because any time that Zhang Jingnan wanted to go, she would step forward, swing, maybe 2-3 punches. Angie Hill would take 3 steps back towards the monster can, and Zhang Jingnan would be so heavy on her lead leg she couldn't even follow. Even if she wanted to run her down, she had no chance. Meanwhile, when Angie Hill wants to enter, she just does it on her own terms because the fence is at Zhang Jingnan's back. So she had fantastic success in this fight with what I used to call the Groanhart knee, because Myrtle Groanhart, who was Glory champion back when I was writing about Glory, so 2016, but he used to do this so much. Anytime the guy went near the ropes, raise his back leg and then jump with a knee with his lead leg, so a little like bicycle knee. And then he'd come down punching. In MMA, you can come down and grab the head, which is lovely. So Angie Hill is constantly jumping into this little knee. Sometimes she's hitting her on the chin, sometimes she's hitting her in the chest, and then she's grabbing the head, getting into the clinch, throwing some knees. Zhang Jingnan keeps doing that redacted vertical hammer fist to start her combinations that doesn't work at all. Every time she leads with her face, so she gets countered with elbows and knees, or jabs. I did like that she was throwing right hands to the body, but the only kicks she threw, she immediately got countered because they were just naked. And she's in a low stance and she stands up to throw her kicks. So Angie Hill's just like, oh, a kick's coming. Here's a right hand down the pipe. The only other kick she threw was a spinning back kick that she threw about 5 times as many spinning back kicks as she threw other kicks. It's like if the person's taking off towards the middle of the cage, pump hands, do some bullshit volume, sprint into a low kick. And stop standing with your back on the fucking fence. It was made even better by the fact that Zhang Jingnan would get kicked in the face at regular intervals with like the slap of a high kick that just caught her, and then she'd emote. And you're like, why are you emoting? You're getting outstruck 3-1. When they hit the clinch, the tie clinch, as they say, a collar tie, double collar ties is what people think of when they say tie clinch in MMA, but Angie Hill was doing great work with an overhook and a collar tie, which is a really good position to beat people up from. And then you could snap down onto the front headlock. So it's the perfect meeting point of striking from the clinch and threatening grappling. And she did that at several points, snapped her down into the front headlock and tried to put her on all fours. But Jingnan was just taking these knees from the clinch. It was dreadful. I just did an article on the clinch in Muay Thai, particularly, I did an article on Jeren Suk, who is a 19-year-old Muay Thai phenom. He's very good in the clinch, particularly for a modern fighter when they're so strict on clinch times. In that, we talked about the headlock, which is quite interesting, because in most women's MMA fights, I'm moaning about the headlock throw. But if someone is holding you with the collar tie or the double collar tie and they're kneeing the shit out of you, you can always try and turn away. As in, like, turn your shoulders and your shoulder will pop their grip. This is what Fedor used to do. He'd grab the back of their head over their arms and then turn his shoulders violently away from the guy. If you watched Dan Hooker versus Arman Tsarukyan, Hooker gets the double collar tie. Arman Tsarukyan's having trouble breaking it. So Arman Tsarukyan puts his left hand across onto Dan Hooker's left hip. And then he turns his body through, so he's like almost turning his back on Dan Hooker, which makes the grip slide off, and then he turns back into him. You gotta like weigh up how much you're going to get battered from that position and if it's worth just doing something like that. But she did do good work in like the second or third round when Angie Hill grabbed the clinch in the middle of the cage. It might have been a double collar tie. And Jingnan went with 4 body hooks and then pushed her away. And that's a good answer for the when people reach for double collar ties, their body is completely exposed, so you can go to that. If you watch Nick Diaz's best fights, like Paul Daly is a good example, maybe Cyborg Santos as well, but Nick Diaz would push guys to the cage and let them grab his head, and then he'd push his head into them so that they couldn't knee him and start flurrying with punches to the body. Or he'd reach across so that his forearm was across the top of both their elbows, put his head on that so that they couldn't knee him, and just punch them in the body with the other hand. He had a few cool tricks coming out of the double collar tie, did old Nick Diaz. It's a great way to get to the guy's body, which Zhang Jingnan wanted to do, but she mostly got beat up in this one. What's next for Jingnan? Don't know. I'm not particularly interested in the lower ranks of women's strawweight. What's next for Angie Hill? Probably a fight in 3 months, if we're honest. Rodrigo Vera versus Kangji Zhu was very funny because he was throwing this right low kick from orthodox. He's throwing this right low kick, which is like a slap on the ankle, and then he steps forward. And I went, that's the saddest little kick I've ever seen. And then he threw it, stepped through, and then stepped back. And as Zhu was stepping in to swing at him, he caught him with a counter left hook, which is a classic. Like, you can do that off good low kicks, throw a right low kick, step back, and throw the left hook as the guy's coming in. But he did it off this goofy little low kick that looked so unthreatening. I think it might have worked even better. Kangji Zhu fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And then Loma Lukbunmi versus Jacqueline Amorim. The theme of this episode has been ring craft and where you're standing. Amorim's first entry, she literally just lowered her head to about chest height and stepped forward because Lukbunmi was already so close to the fence she could literally just push her. Lukbunmi tried to come off the fence and she actually did a couple of good knees off there. Her clinch work is quite fun, but respect to Amorim because she just did a Victor roll, which you so seldom see. Who does them? Mateusz Gamrot does them when he's in with really good guys. But Victor roll is where you just dive through your legs and roll. There's more to it than that. Go watch Gary Tonin in One Championship. But you roll onto this knee bar entry, and it looked like Loma Lukbunmi, she's done a good job of like shoring up her grappling for MMA, but she does not understand leg locks at all. Because she was slipping her knee from this knee bar, and she was starting to turn away, and she was almost out, and then she turned back into the lass and started trying to stand over the top of her. If you can just turn away and slip your knee free through their knee line, you can, there's cool backstep berimbolos that you can do like the Ruotolo brothers, but mostly you're safe and you're out of there. But she got pulled into 50-50, ended up on the bottom. I think she tried to stand up the wrong way at one point too and just got knocked back down. And then the other lass came on top, punched her a few times, opened the legs, went to side control, got the Kimura grip, finished the armbar. Lukbunmi's game is basically that she has built a wrestling game to stop people taking her down and then survives the best she can on the floor. She does not have a particularly deep understanding of a lot of grappling positions, it seems. But then this is in the weed shit. This is why the 50-50 is so powerful in MMA, because if you do understand it, you can really make the other guy's job hard. Corey Sandhagen popped Davison Figueiredo and TJ Dillashaw's knees from the 50-50 because they tried to push up into him. Not because he kept them still and did a perfect heel hook, but because he just had control of the position and understood how it worked. And they sort of had the wrestling approach of get on top and put my weight on you at several points. So all in all, a pretty good night. Jesus Christ, I've been recording for an hour and a half. Fair enough. I'm your boy Jack Slack. I have a Patreon where I talk about all kinds of cool shit. I did an article about Jaron Suk last week. Oh, I didn't even mention why I brought that up. Yeah, he does a great thing where he uses what's sometimes called the long clinch or the vice clinch, where you cross your hands and you put your head underneath the opponent's chin, and then you straighten your arms. Rather than trying to pull them in, you straighten your arms and your biceps pinch against the side of their head, and he knees from there, and then he turns and gets them in like a side headlock, like a schoolboy headlock. And when you do that, the ref immediately jumps in. But you've got a second there to try and get off a knee. So in Muay Thai, the child's schoolboy headlock can be really dangerous. He knocked out a lad called Captain Team in one of his title fights in RWS by getting this headlock and just throwing the knee into his eye socket before the ref got in the way. And the ref's like, fair play, I didn't get there in time. Anyway, if you want to get in on the extra shit and learn cool stuff about striking, grappling, ringcraft, sign up to the Patreon, support the podcast, be a boy, and you get an extra podcast every week. Or at least when there's stuff going on. I'm your boy Jack Slack, and I'll catch you when I catch you. Alonzo Menifield using Pat Barry's game plan of the year, bless.